A recent report in MarketWatch has hailed the return of United States manufacturing jobs. Now, according to the report, U.S. companies are now reshoring a lot of jobs that they had sent originally overseas. Now, how many of them? Well, let's drill into the numbers. According to MarketWatch, over 60,000 manufacturing jobs were added in the United States in 2014 versus only 12,000 the year before. So, wow, what a big jump. A lot of jobs, 48,000 manufacturing jobs returning to the United States from overseas. Prior to the, it's much better than the year prior. Great. So, that's either through, of course, reshoring jobs or foreign companies moving manufacturing bases over here. Now, that's also an interesting distinction because it's not an American company, but they're providing American jobs. Interesting. But I guess that helps, right? Now, according to a study from the Reshoring Initiative, as many as 50,000 jobs were offshored last year. So, we brought back 12,000, but offshored 50,000 in 2013, same year. So that's a huge problem, right? Now, that's a decline, however. So that's actually supposedly good news. Oh, we only offshored 50,000 jobs this year, as opposed to 2003, when we were offshoring $150,000 or jobs. Great! Wow! Awesome. 150,000 jobs in 2003. Yeah. But no, we're only doing 50,000. You guys should celebrate. We're coming back. Okay. Well, Reshoring Initiative President Harry Moser told MarketWatch, for the first time in 20 years, we've seen a net gain to manufacturing jobs to the tune of 10,000. Wow. Really amazing, huh? Not really. I'm not impressed, but let's continue with this. So, more information on the Reshoring Initiative. Now, the Reshoring Initiative launched in 2010 with the goal of bringing well-paying manufacturing jobs back to the United States. Makes sense? Now, what they do is they provide research case studies and a calculator to determine whether it's worth it for companies to offshore their jobs. The advantages to keeping jobs in the United States include faster turnaround, lower shipping costs, more flexibility, lower risk of having their intellectual property stolen, higher quality and consistency, higher productivity, go America, and being able to put Made in the USA on your product labels. Well, a lot of people now are looking for Made in USA labels. They want to buy goods made by American workers. I do too. It's great. I think there was a recent poll that showed that a majority of Americans would buy something labeled Made in America over something that did not have that label. Great. Awesome. So, this is a good initiative to try and bring that back, to have more stuff made in America. So, the question is whether or not this is a good thing. Yes and no. Now, why do I say that? Well, first off, why are they bringing these jobs back? Well, it's not because corporations have suddenly decided to get more patriotic. Yeah, America! Right? No, it's because the simple fact is that American workers are now cheaper, in some cases, than Chinese workers. Interesting. Now, where do I get this information from? Well, the Economist actually says and points out that since 2012, when 37% of large companies plan to reshore manufacturing jobs from China, it was because of labor costs in China rising. Interesting. And so why are these companies doing that? As I said, labor costs. Well, in a survey of American manufacturing companies by the Boston Consulting Group, in April 2012, 37% of those with annual sales above $1 billion said they were planning or actively considering shifting production facilities from China to America. Of the biggest firms, with sales above $10 billion a year, 48% came out as reshorers. So almost half of these companies polled are reshorers. They plan to reshore, like, oh, let's bring it back. But the most common reason for reshoring is that Chinese labor costs have risen so much. Interesting. Now, why is that? Why is that? Why is Chinese labor? Well, there's several different factors. First of all, it's our domestic policy. Our domestic policy, we've seen a lot of union busting and a lot of stagnant wages, a lot of attempts to block minimum wage increases, to block wage increases across the board, even though in many states, as I had mentioned before, we've actually tried to raise the minimum wage and have been successful. Nonetheless, these policies, these anti-worker policies, and these trickle-down policies made it so that American workers have stayed relatively stagnant when it comes to their cost. Whereas Chinese workers, their costs have increased. Well, how much? Well, according to the International Labor Organization, real wages in Asia between 2000 and 2008 rose by 7.1 to 7.8% a year. And pay for senior management in several emerging markets such as China, Turkey, and Brazil now either match or exceed pay in America and Europe. And this is according also to a recent study by the Hay Group, which is a consulting firm for some of these corporations. So here you have Chinese labor and Chinese executives starting to make a ton more money. And given some of the costs associated with overseas work, as I had mentioned earlier, lower shipping costs, faster turnaround, flexibility, lower risk of having your IP stolen, which happens a lot in China when it comes to Apple. I mean, how many times have you seen an iPad knockoff? Or an iPod or whatever? Or an iPhone? Lots of different Chinese knockoffs. Well, you make your stuff in America and you reduce the risk of somebody taking that design and trying to make their own spin on it from your factories, So that's good. And of course, higher productivity. You get better productivity in America because Americans are better workers. We've got better technology here in the States. And of course, higher safety concerns, just better working conditions. Better working conditions make for more productive workers. Plus, you don't have to spring for suicide nets. So there's a lot of reasons that having your stuff, your factories in America, is so much of a better deal than just going for the cheap labor in China, which is still arguably cheaper than America. But nonetheless, with all of those other factors combined, companies are taking a look at that and saying, well, no, it's just not worth it anymore. And besides, their wages are going to continue to keep rising, so let's just go for the cheaper Americans until Americans start making more, and then we'll go somewhere else. So there's a problem with that. So it's good news for the wrong reason. And we really need to change some of our policies to fix that.